Well, the Real Madrid situation has gotten a lot worse. So let's go ahead and talk about it. There's a lot of random shit being bandied around. Uh, but I think it's important, obviously, as a bullshit artist myself, to cut through it and try and figure out actually what is happening. And in order to do that, we're going to need some credible reporting, which means we're going to need to go to a journalist working at a journalistic institution to figure out what is happening. As much as I'd love to go through all of this stuff, you got this thing from Madrid Extra. Xabi, come on. Xabi saw the team far from what he wants to be and accelerated the process. This is not liked by the players. His training sessions were excessive. Of course, I'm sure you've seen the quote somebody posted around. Like, he yelled at the team at one point, like, I didn't come here to, babysit people or to coach school children, or however it's translated, right? There's a lot of that stuff flying around. And then no wonder they loved Ancelotti so much. They refused to work hard. Bayern players secretly trained behind Ancelotti's back when Ancelotti was managing at Bayern. There's important things to get out of the way, though. You got to mention at the top that even though we are going to talk about Real Madrid, the culture behind the scenes, how all this shit went down, where they are now, it is very clear that it is possible to be very successful the way Real Madrid has done things. The problem and the poison that, it eventually infects everybody from Real Madrid to the Roman Empire is you think that you'll just continue to be as good as you are because you are who you are. Right? Like, oh, we're not going to get knocked down. We're the Roman Empire. Boom. Eventually, if you're not paying attention, if you don't adapt and change and learn and become, continuously strive to improve, you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. Just ask Manchester United. Unconscionable it would have felt for Manchester United to be as absolute dog shit as they've been over the last 7-8 years. 20 years ago. Like 2010. 2005 to 2010. I mean, Manchester United at that particular point was the team that had a lot of the best players in the world. They'd never really finished below the top 3 in the Premier League. Stop me if this sounds like Real Madrid. And they were competing for and regularly winning Champions Leagues. They were on that stage, right? Their players were on the cover of FIFA consistently, right? They were, if you had to hold up a team, I mean, the residual effect of this lasted for years. I mean, in 2018 or whatever, 2019, you still have guys like Romelu Lukaku referring to Manchester United as the biggest club in the world, right? Like, that was not, if you had said that in 2012 and 2013, people would have backed you. You would have been able to put together a compelling argument. Yeah, Real Madrid, all these Champions Leagues, but Manchester United has been the biggest club, since the mid 90s. It is, all I'm saying is it's possible for things to change, right? It is possible for things to change. And there is no mandate in heaven that Real Madrid is going to continue to be great. And so it is dangerous for them to walk this path of, well, we've always done these things this way and this is fine. Because it's clear that, when everybody else is trying as hard as they possibly can to use everything to their advantage to win, that if you're maybe not doing that, that could be a problem. That's a conversation and a topic for another day, but that's my full thoughts on that. Real Madrid has been incredibly successful doing what they were doing, and I'm not trying to suggest that Real Madrid didn't deserve that success. They earned it on the field, and they were unbelievable at it. To Xabi Alonso. The reason, to boil this down, and you can totally check out the whole thing written by Alex Kirkland, it's why Real Madrid sacked Xabi Alonso after that amount of time. That this boils, the reason this all happened is because apparently Xabi Alonso was not the actual choice of Florentino Perez to be the manager. Apparently it was, one of the deputies on the team, a guy whose name I've heard before, but I am not particularly familiar with. Apparently the person that actually made the decision to bring him in was Jose Angel Sanchez, who's the director general, whatever the hell that is. I feel like I've heard his name before. He's around, one of the big important decision makers. He convinces Florentino Perez to take the job. Apparently Florentino Perez thinks that he's not experienced. He was concerned about his relative inexperience and viewed him as a gamble, which is to me insane because dude's like the best managerial prospect in the world. He's also a Real Madrid legend. He would totally want to go there. Why would you not want to bring him in? Maybe Florentino Perez was onto something because he knows that Real Madrid requires a certain type of manager, a Carlo Ancelotti, who is going to manage the people. There's no system. You can't try to you can't try and institute a system or a tactical plan or really change the habits of the players or the team. And I think that's where Carlo Ancelotti came in and did really well, is he came in and basically got the mindset of the players to the point that they needed to get to execute. But there's one very interesting thing about Real Madrid in terms of what they value and what the goal of their teams is. Because while Real Madrid is able to get up for and execute in those certain games, Real Madrid is not a regular champion of La Liga. In fact, they have not been able to defend a La Liga crown, right? As much as they're the greatest team to ever walk the earth when it comes to Champions Leagues, they have not successfully defended, won back-to-back La Liga titles since 07 and 08. Okay, there isn't the same level of consistency when it comes to being able to win in the league as much as they're able to win in the cup. My personal theory, that is just mine, is that the type of management that Real Madrid seems to require with the way that the team is built, the Galactico idea, and just these monster egos trying to get them to work together, is you need a guy like Carlo Ancelotti that can do that. But in order to win leagues consistently and to become like an all-time great team that's winning trebles all over the place, you need some of that. You need a better diet. You need like a tactical plan to be able to execute week in and week out. Because if you're just managing the personalities of these players, as good as Kylian Mbappe and Vinicius are, right, as good as all of these guys are, you need something beyond that to be able to go out and win consistently. Teams in the Premier League prove this all the time. As good as Manchester City is, as good as Liverpool is, talent, position, all the players that are there, you just can't win that league consistently. And that's with trying to do all this shit they're trying to do. Manchester City's diet and routine and training and tactical understanding is on a completely different level than Real Madrid's. And Real Madrid's talent and inshallah approach has worked for them to accomplish the things they want to accomplish, which is winning the big showpiece Champions League, right? But they have not been the team that's turned in the most league titles over the last 15 or 20 years. That's obviously been Barcelona. So everybody's got their own goals and everything, but it is, I think, like I said, just my opinion, I think it's reflective of where the club is at. But because Florentino Perez didn't fully support the signing of Xabi Alonso, which comes as news to me, like an actually big surprise, you get the idea from this article that the players smelled blood in the water, right? They could sense the fact that Xabi Alonso was not supported by Florentino Perez, right? And they highlight particularly the incident with Vinicius coming off the field in the 72nd minute and losing his mind and being upset. They also highlight, before we get into that, the transfer window, because Xabi Alonso came in and said, hey, I want a tempo-setting midfielder, right? This is in the article here. But they went out and got Trent and Dean Huijsen and Alvaro Carreras and Franco Mastantuono, but they didn't get the player that Alonso wanted. They apparently didn't believe it was necessary and pointed to the existing midfield options. So he felt the decision significantly hindered the team's possibilities of success this season. Basically, they brought in this great manager, this proven, and I don't know why he said he was relatively inexperienced. Yeah, he hasn't managed a ton of seasons, but this guy's clearly an unbelievable manager. And they didn't give him what he wanted. Instead, they went and signed who Papa Perez wanted, right? Like Florentino Perez. I think that's really what this boils down to. Xabi Alonso was probably the last manager in Florentino Perez's tenure that was appointed without his express, I want that guy, everybody else agree with me vibe. And he's really the guy that runs the team. And the manager should do what he wants him to do. And what you come in this story multiple times is that Florentino Perez and Xabi Alonso weren't on the same page. Perez didn't like him. And Xabi Alonso was, as a result, not able to be the boss. He wasn't able to execute his ideas. He wanted to change various features of the players' daily routine and their habits. He wanted to see an improvement in punctuality, being on time. He wanted to see fewer outside figures, which are people close to the players but that aren't part of the squad and the coaching staff. He didn't want to see as many of them present at the training ground. This was not received by certain members of the dressing room. Then there's the Vinicius rant. Just as damaging was the reaction of the days followed. Vinicius apologized to everyone except his manager. Sosa's close to the locker room told ESPN that other players already unhappy now sensed weakness in Alonso and his lack of support from within the club. In his first real crisis, the coach hadn't received the backing he needed. Instead, his decision to substitute Vinicius had been undermined. This just gives like gasoline to these guys that are used to being able to get whatever they want using their ego, using their gravitas. Right now, all of a sudden, they sense that Xabi Alonso, you're already dealing with a problem where the players are more important than the manager at Real Madrid. Now, if the manager's on borrowed time and it's clear the management there doesn't like him, doesn't support him, i.e. Florentino Perez, there's no reason to listen to him anymore. It's hard to, execute as a manager once you end up in that position. Then he goes on this bad run of form, perhaps unsurprisingly, considering all of the stuff that we, know now. Apparently, he sidelined some guy that was responsible for the physical preparation of the team, Antonio Pintos, and the day after he was fired, Pintos is back. This is, kind of in the same mode as this is the way we've always done things at Real Madrid, get on the bus or get out of the way. But then he kind of saves his job. They go on a little winning streak. They end up losing the Supercopa, and all of a sudden it just ends. Anyways, now he's apparently, sources close to the coach told ESPN that he's disappointed that contributions from key players weren't what he wanted, disappointed that unlike at Leverkusen, he didn't have the freedom to implement his ideas, and disappointed with himself, believing he could have handled certain situations differently, which is kind of a vintage, very good manager. He is being critical of himself as well. Alonso felt some players were not looking after themselves properly, citing concerns with their diet. The coach was also concerned with the number of dressing room leaks appearing in the media, a feeling shared by some of the players who backed him. So basically players going, why does all this stuff keep leaking? Sources close to the coach pinpointed an influential vocal minority who had been unwilling to take on board his ideas. 3 players, senior players, Vinicius Jr., Jude Bellingham, and Fede Valverde, were named. Now, the interesting thing about this is, somebody like Jude Bellingham, and I think Fede Valverde too, they're not really leaking types, right? Particularly, they seem to ascribe to the Thierry Henry idea, where when he comes on set and talks about how you handle these situations as a player, you talk about it behind the scenes, right? And then you downplay it in public. Bellingham denied reports saying they were all behind the manager and that the behind-the-scenes issues were fabricated and exaggerated, right? That's, to me, strikes me as the type of thing you would say if you're Jude Bellingham, if you're having issues with this shit behind the scenes because you feel like you're too big to show up on time or whatever else it is, right? We're not behind the scenes, but that's at least the way it's being painted in this article, right? But you're not making it a public thing. You're just having those disagreements with Xabi Alonso, or you're politicking behind the scenes to work around it, right, to figure out what's going on. And if you're saying this sort of stuff publicly, I don't think Jude Bellingham or Fede Valverde, for that matter, are the guys that are leaking this. I think this had to do a lot with Vinicius. And apparently in this article, it came out that Vinicius was originally going to be benched for the Club World Cup semifinal until some injuries forced a reshuffling of the lineup and put him back on the field. This apparently pissed off Vinny, and he's just been pissed off ever since about Xabi Alonso. Vinicius was among a handful of players who had not posted about Alonso's departure. Sources close to the Brazilian told ESPN he had no plans to do so. So, I mean, it's clear to me from reading the tea leaves here that it was Vinicius Jr. against Xabi Alonso was the flashpoint, and that was the most severe blot and mark on Xabi Alonso's position. The damaged his standing, made him look like a dead man walking, and then he just wasn't able to basically be the manager of the team. But it's kind of what I said in the first video, that you can't be the manager of Real Madrid. You can't. Florentino Perez is the manager of Real Madrid. You can be the coach. You are the first coach. You're not the manager. At least in the same title as, the other clubs that are around. You're just not. You are the guy that's trying to make sure everybody's happy so that they can go out in the field and use their unbelievable talent to try and go out and win, to use that mystique, to use that confidence and the bravado and the ability that they have to be able to go out and win those Champions League matches when all the chips are down and the most, the highest levels of quality can make themselves known to make all of the difference. Now, the board was frustrated with various aspects of his management. Injuries, the coach's handling of Vinicius were the two main concerns, as well as the fact that the team just hadn't been playing well for months. Of course, this is a what came first, the chicken or the egg. I think the chicken came first. I think that the reason these struggles happened, and clearly that this is something that's a lot of people are putting their finger on, is Xabi Alonso never actually had a chance to be the great manager that he is, because Florentino Perez never really wanted him there. So the moment that there were going to be flashpoints, and look, when you're coaching Mbappe, Vinicius, these are really intense, passionate players. That's who they are. It's part of the reason that they're so good. There are going to be flashpoints. Even if it's going well, there's going to be flashpoints. And you're going to need to back the managers so that those players know they actually have to deal with it. Then maybe Florentino Perez doesn't want to back the manager because he doesn't want to lose Vinicius at the end of his contract, which is very much up in the air. There are a lot of different aspects to consider. But the point is, this is going to happen. It was always going to happen, and Xabi Alonso was never going to get the backing he needed to be able to deal with it. Where somebody like Carlo Ancelotti just wouldn't do it in the first place. Like, as much as he's the Don with the eyebrow who seems to be the king and the boss of everything, that is a very carefully cultivated aura. And he manages to cultivate that by never seeking to put himself in a position where he is, lighting the fuse. Where Xabi Alonso as a coach, sometimes you have to light the fuse because a player that really wants to be out there in Vinicius isn't the best option in that particular moment. This is why Carlo Ancelotti was just more successful at Real Madrid than Xabi Alonso. And I don't necessarily think it's Xabi Alonso's fault because he's a manager in that sense. Alonso said it didn't go as well as we would have liked. Coaching Real Madrid's been an honor and a responsibility. I leave with respect, gratitude, and pride that I did my best. I mean, after having read this, officially sourced stuff, reporting that has been reviewed, and as somebody that went to journalism school, not that I use it on this channel, people misconstrue that all the time. This is not any sort of journalistic channel. It's me sitting down talking about shit. I understand the difference between this and that, and I understand the rigors of journalism and that those sources have to go through. It's just impossible to escape the idea that Xabi Alonso is trying to coach Real Madrid like any other team. And I know that a Real Madrid fan would come back and say, well, we're not any other team, we're Real Madrid. And it's like, yeah, but you should probably still be in shape. Imagine how much better you would be if you were in shape and showed up on time and listened to a coach. But that's just my idea. Right? I'm not on Real Madrid. We will see. Right? It will be chaotic. There will be drama. And Real Madrid will likely still win some stuff. That next generation of Barcelona players coming through looks pretty darn good. And Real Madrid's Galacticos approach has now, I believe, scared away a lot of the absolute top managers from wanting to take that job. I don't see somebody like Jurgen Klopp going, wow, I really want to jump into that. You're not going to be able to attract the monster name managers back to Real Madrid. Maybe you can get the Jose Mourinho back in there, but we all know he's not at his best right now. He's trying to work his way back up to that point, and it would be kind of a wild swing for Real Madrid to go there. But I think there are at least some managers that would absolutely think twice about taking this job just because you're not in control of nearly as much of the team as you would like to be as a manager, as you're used to being as a manager, or is probably as healthy to be as a manager. The team is run by Florentino Perez and his relationship with the players, and you're just caught in the middle. That's what this all reads like. I encourage you to read the whole thing. It's a wild ride.